If you've been keeping up with current events, you've no doubt heard disturbing reports coming out of South Asia, the country of Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, once part of the old British Empire. Now almost 300,000 Rohingya have fled the country, gone to Bangladesh in the past couple of weeks. So the Rohingya are an ethnic group, mostly Muslims, a minority ethnic group in the country who have been targeted and persecuted in the past, with many of the Buddhist majority considering them Bangladeshi rather than Burmese. The UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights for Myanmar seems to think at least 1,000 people have been killed in the past fortnight. In fact, Yang He Lee said that number is, quote, very likely an underestimate. The Myanmar government has its own figures, of course. Are they to be trusted given the nature of this crisis? Zaid Rad al-Hussein has said, what we are seeing, quote, seems a textbook example of ethnic cleansing, unquote. He is the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, by the way. The Rohingya people, or to throw a historical label your way, Rakhine Indians, Indo-Aryans from Rakhine state, formerly Arakan. It's in the west of the country on the coast. Think Bay of Bengal. About 1.3 million Rohingya were residents of the state before this latest crisis, or military operation, which the government says is targeting the Rohingya militants, not civilians. The Rohingya people as a whole are regarded as illegal immigrants, for the record. Now, what appears to have sparked this crackdown, military operation, and now humanitarian crisis is an attack on a police station on August 25th, which apparently killed 12 security personnel. An attack, we're told, Rohingya militants were responsible for. The reaction to this, according to the UN and other groups, has been a brutal campaign. Entire villages burnt down, killings of men, women and children, people running for their lives. Quoting Zaid Rad al-Hussein again, we have received multiple reports and satellite imagery of security forces and local militia burning Rohingya villages and consistent accounts of extrajudicial killings, including shooting fleeing civilians. I call on the government to end its current cruel military operation with accountability for all violations that have occurred and to reverse the pattern of severe and widespread discrimination against the Rohingya population, unquote. His admirable call for accountability is not realistic given the historical treatment of this group of people, and given the power of Myanmar's military, the power it has over the country. The army in Myanmar is pretty big and certainly is battle-hardened from decades of fighting insurgents, ethnic and political. And in truth, this country has a terrible human rights record. Aung San Suu Kyi, Nobel Peace Laureate winner and de facto leader of Myanmar, has been coming in for stiff international criticism and attention, I guess you'd say. I believe Desmond Tutu has written a letter to her on social media. I haven't read what the religious leader has said, but I understand that there is now a petition calling for Aung San Suu Kyi to be stripped of her Nobel Peace Prize over the Rohingya persecution and crisis. I don't think Nobel Peace Prizes can actually be withdrawn, but anyway. She has not condemned the violence and the disproportional military response to the militant attacks. She, of course, doesn't control the generals in her country. Her comments on the Rohingya and Rakhine state seem diplomatic and maybe conservative to my ears. She never seems like the kind of lady who will cave in to pressure or change her mind so easily. Saying that, I get why many are disturbed by her lack of a condemnation, but she probably knows better or understands more than many of her international critics about the complex ethnic tensions and hatreds that plague her country. For the civilians fleeing the horror, political talk and international diplomacy are a million miles away from the reality on the ground. Yeah. For the civilians caught up in this, they just want the nightmare to end, I would think.